It is the second of Horuma Rin's 7 Lucky God series, sporting high-end shooting combat as well as being rather tankier than what you'd expect at first glance. It is SFJ01 Juronanchi, with the kit of Revive, Suction, Longshot, multi-legs, and the leg ability of Desert type, which grants S rank on desert terrain in addition to the standard matches of the leg. Now, as mentioned, this is the second of 7 of the Lucky God series that Horuma Rin will be working on as time goes forward. The first of which, of course, was Bentensada, which also sported a very dangerous high-end shooting kit for females. But in the case for Juronanchi, that is certainly no exception. But this time, with another interesting twist to make sure he maintains a competitive edge on the field. Revive is a healing-based skill that, when used, will restore all broken parts to itself or ally as long as they are still alive, which means as long as the head part is intact, any broken arms or legs that have been broken will be restored back to 10% HP so that he can live and fight another day. But of course, if he or an ally goes down, Revive of course becomes useless. Suction is a shooting-based skill we've seen only one other time thus far at this point. That was on Gato Alpar, the cat type. Simply put, when attacking a target, it will create a suction in a vacuum space that will pull them back to the center line. So this is really good as a way to stall, say, heavy nukers such as Metal Eater or God Emperor. After you break their legs, they finish their turn. This is a really good way to stall them permanently and keep them glued to the line in a, essentially, like I mentioned, in a stalling form of ailment combat. But this also works in reverse, where if you can poorly time it and you catch them in their heat phase, this will automatically pull them all the way to the line and basically accelerate their heat phase from beginning straight to end, which can honestly spell a lot of very dangerous moments for you if you do not time it correctly. Longshot is a relatively more conventional shooting skill we've been seeing more and more often, but simply put, its base damage actually will go up relative to how far away the target is from the center line. So naturally, foes that you catch at the very end of their heat phase, or at the start of, at the very end of their cool phase, or at the beginning of their heat phase, is where you're going to really maximize on your damage with this skill. That being said, having Suction and Longshot at the same time does kind of make it a really interesting mix. Given that you have one arm that keeps people glued to the center line, and another that has really low damage the closer they are to it. But it is still a very solid and very dangerous kit all the same that Juronanchi is making use of. With the base power also very, very solid between the two, about 1154, almost 1200 for Suction, and almost 1800 for the base power of Longshot before modifiers, makes both arms very dangerous on the field if used correctly. But also on that, his stats across the board are very much so higher tier when it comes to what they possess. In this case, especially with it being armor. In this case, about 5600 HP for the head, definitely much higher above higher tier than what you'd expect. Means that he's going to be very tanky across the board right from start. Arms at about 40-49 and about 37-50 each means, again, very tanky and can definitely take a lot of blows before they start collecting damage. Legs of 44, about 4,500 are also very good too, but let's also look at his leg stats for just a moment too. His melee resist of 781 may not be super great, but with a shoot resist of 2130, he basically and casually is scuttling into tank territory at this point. Meaning that even though up close and personal, he will definitely go down moderately easily, when it comes to combat from afar, he can definitely take a hit and keep on kicking, which is something you really don't want this model in particular to do, especially given that if you let him live long enough, he will basically restore all of his parts back, even if they're only at 10% each. A mobility of 797 also is pretty solid too, especially for multi-ped legs right where you want to be. An evade of 473 isn't really all that great though, but with a high-end combat fighter much like he is, I really don't think you really have a plan to do a lot of dodging if you plan to use him. As a pure set score, I do honestly have to rate him a pretty solid 7.5 out of 10. He is very tanky, he has very good base damage. It's just, his arms are really weird when used together. So it is going to be really hard to have to juggle using those, and Juronanchi's role on the field will either be that of a cooldown staller if you can catch them if you're fast enough, or as a long-range Punisher with Longshot, but there really is going to be no in-between if you want to maximize on his damage. As mixed parts, on the other hand, I do have to rate him much higher at an 8 out of 10, given the fact that even though his arms and his head together may be rather strange, if you choose to mix it up or use his parts elsewhere, you can absolutely capitalize on them very easily. Suction, again, for stalling anyone that is in cooldown to make sure that they don't get a chance to take another turn. Longshot for making sure that you can punish any foes that are coming in from afar. Revive, honestly, you can use just about anywhere as well, especially with it being melee-based. So this is a very rare skill in particular to make use of, even if it is a heavy part. And then, of course, the multi-legs with the desert type ability are honestly always really nice too, given the fact that desert is a terrain that not a lot of legs that are not flight legs are very good at least. So having multi-ped legs with another ability of this and an extra S-rank terrain will give players a little bit of an extra alternative as leg choices to use without having to subject themselves to any anti-air weaknesses.